The morning sun was already hot when Kang Minho stepped out of his small research tent. He stretched his arms and looked around the empty land. Red dirt stretched as far as he could see. A few dry trees stood here and there, and the air shimmered with heat waves. This was the Australian outback, and Minho had been living here alone for 2 weeks. Minho was 22 years old and came from Seoul, South Korea. 3 years ago, he had never seen a desert. He had never held a spider. He had never slept under the stars with no city lights around him. But now, after 3 years studying at the University of Queensland, he felt at home in this wild place. He walked to his work table and put on thick gloves. Today he needed to collect more samples for his research. He was studying tiny life forms that could live in extreme heat and cold. These small creatures might help scientists understand life on other planets. His professor had sent him here because few students were brave enough to work alone in such a dangerous place. Minho opened a large jar and looked inside. A big black spider sat at the bottom. Its legs were thick and hairy. Red markings covered its back. This was a funnel web spider, one of the most dangerous spiders in the world. Its bite could kill a person in 15 minutes, but Minho reached into the jar without fear and picked it up gently. "Hello, my friend," he said softly to the spider. "Time for your morning checkup." The spider did not move much in his hands. Minho had learned that if you moved slowly and stayed calm, most dangerous animals would not attack. He had been bitten by spiders before. It hurt, but he had lived through it. His body was now used to many different venoms. High above the red desert, something watched Minho work. A ship hung in the sky, but no human eyes could see it. Special technology made it invisible. Inside the ship, 3 alien creatures stared down at the young man holding the deadly spider. "Look at this primitive being," said Commander Velak. His voice was like the sound of metal scraping stone. "It handles a venomous creature with no protection tools." Velak was tall and thin with gray skin. His people, the Veltari, came from a Taos planet with soft light and gentle weather. They had never seen creatures like the ones on Earth. To them, Minho looked weak and soft. His skin had no scales or thick fur. He had no claws or sharp teeth. He looked like easy prey. "Commander, our scans show this creature has no natural weapons," said Science Officer Cattle. She was smaller than Velak, but just as thin. "No poison glands, no armored skin, no enhanced strength. How does it survive on this death world?" The aliens had been watching Earth for many days. They had seen lions hunt zebras. They had seen sharks attack seals. They had seen snakes that could kill elephants. But they had also seen humans walking among all these dangerous animals. The aliens could not understand how such weak creatures had survived. "Perhaps they are very lucky," said Pilot Nexar. "Or perhaps the dangerous animals feel sorry for them." Down below, Minho continued his work. He took measurements of the spider and made notes in his book. Then he gently put the spider back in its jar and picked up another container. This one held a small octopus. Blue rings covered its body. This was a blue-ringed octopus, small enough to fit in a person's hand, but carrying enough poison to kill 26 adult humans. Minho lifted the octopus carefully. It changed colors in his palm, showing beautiful patterns of blue and yellow. He smiled at it like he was looking at a pet cat. "You are very pretty today," he told the octopus. "But I know you are also very dangerous." The aliens watching from above could not believe what they saw. "This makes no sense," said Cattle. That small creature our database shows as extremely lethal. One touch should kill the primitive being instantly. Maybe their database is wrong, suggested Nexar. Our database is never wrong, Velak said firmly. These creatures are simply too stupid to understand danger. Minho finished checking the octopus and placed it back in its special tank. He walked to his cooling box and took out a sandwich and a bottle of water. As he ate, he watched the horizon. A family of kangaroos jumped past in the distance. A large bird with a bright blue head walked between the dry bushes. This was a cassowary, a bird that could run 50 kilometers per hour and had claws that could cut through metal. The bird noticed Minho and started walking toward him. The aliens in their ship moved closer to their screens. Now we will see what happens when the Death World fights back, said Velak with excitement. But Minho just sat still and finished his sandwich. When the cassowary came close, he spoke to it in a gentle voice. "Hello there, big guy. Are you looking for food?" He broke off a piece of his sandwich and threw it on the ground near the bird. The cassowary ate the bread and then walked away peacefully. The aliens were quiet for a long moment. "I do not understand," said Cadel finally. "The death creatures do not attack this being. They seem to like him." "Impossible," said Velak. "No intelligent species can survive on a death world without weapons or armor. There must be something we are missing." Minho packed up his research materials and prepared to go deeper into the desert. He had heard there were some interesting rock formations about 10 kilometers away. He might find new types of extremophile bacteria there. He put on his hat, filled his water bottles, and started walking. As he walked, he began to sing a Korean song his mother used to sing to him. His voice echoed across the empty desert. Behind him, small creatures came out to investigate the sounds. A snake slithered past his feet. A lizard ran up a nearby tree. None of them threatened him. The aliens followed him in their invisible ship. They were starting to feel confused and worried. These humans were not behaving like any other species they had ever encountered. "Commander," said Nexar, "should we begin the contact protocol?" Velak thought for a moment. The Veltari had contacted hundreds of primitive species across the galaxy. It was always the same. They would appear, show their superior technology, and the primitive beings would surrender immediately. Then the Veltari would study them and decide if they were useful. "Yes," Velak decided. "This creature appears to be alone and harmless. It will make a good test subject. Prepare the paralysis beam." As Minho walked deeper into the desert, he had no idea that his normal day was about to become the most important day in human history. Minho was examining a strange rock formation when the shadow fell over him. He looked up, expecting to see a cloud blocking the sun. Instead, he saw something impossible. A large silver ship hung in the air above him. It was perfectly silent and shaped like a giant teardrop. "That is definitely not in my textbook," Minho said to himself. He set down his rock samples and stood up slowly. His mind raced through possibilities. Military test aircraft, some kind of drone. But the ship was too big and too quiet to be anything made by humans. As a science student, Minho had read about UFO reports, but he had always been skeptical. Now he was staring at proof that humans were not alone in the universe. The ship lowered itself until it was hovering just above the ground. A door opened in its side with a soft hissing sound. 3 figures stepped out, and Minho's jaw dropped open. They were definitely not human. They stood about 2 meters tall, but were incredibly thin. Their skin was gray and smooth like rubber. They had large black eyes and no visible noses. Their fingers were long with too many joints. They wore tight-fitting suits that seemed to change color in the sunlight. Commander Valak stepped forward and raised a small device that looked like a metallic wand. He pointed it at Minho and activated the paralysis beam. This weapon had never failed. It sent neural disruption waves that would freeze any creature's nervous system instantly. The target would fall down, unable to move but still conscious. It was perfect for capturing specimens. The beam hit Minho directly in the chest. He felt a strange tingling sensation, like electricity running through his body. He stumbled backward, but did not fall. The tingling faded after a few seconds. "Huh," said Minho, looking down at himself. That was weird. Valak stared at his weapon in confusion. He checked the power levels. Everything looked normal. He fired again, this time holding the beam on Minho for a full 10 seconds. Minho felt the tingling again, stronger this time. He shook his head like he was trying to clear water from his ears. "Could you please stop doing that?" Minho asked politely. "It makes my teeth itch." The three aliens looked at each other with growing alarm. Cattell pulled out a different device and pointed it at Minho. This one scanned biological systems. The readings made no sense. "Commander," she whispered, "this creature's nervous system is incredibly complex. It has redundant neural pathways we have never seen before. The paralysis beam is being absorbed and rerouted through backup systems." "That is impossible," Valak hissed. "No biological system can be that advanced." Minho, meanwhile, was studying the aliens with scientific curiosity. His fear was being overwhelmed by fascination. He noticed how they moved carefully, like they were afraid of the ground beneath their feet. He saw how their eyes seemed to have trouble with the bright sunlight. Most interesting of all, he noticed they were breathing heavily, as if Earth's air was difficult for them to process. "You are not from Earth," Minho said, stating the obvious. "This is remarkable. I am honored to meet you. My name is Kang Minho. I am a student of marine biology." His polite greeting surprised the aliens. They had expected screaming or running, or fainting. Instead, this creature was introducing itself like they had met at a social gathering. "You will come with us," Valak said in broken English. The Veltari had studied human languages from intercepted radio signals. "You will be examined." "I appreciate the invitation," Minho replied, "but I have work to finish here. Perhaps we could schedule a meeting for tomorrow?" Nexar laughed, making a sound like grinding gears. "It thinks it has a choice." The pilot pulled out a capture net made of energy strands. This device had never failed to subdue any creature. He threw it at Minho, and the net wrapped around him with crackling blue light. Minho felt the energy trying to tighten around his body. It was uncomfortable but not unbearable. He had experienced worse pain from jellyfish stings while diving in the Great Barrier Reef. He examined the net with interest, noting how the energy patterns moved. "This is fascinating technology," he said. "How do you generate coherent energy in a flexible matrix like this?" While he spoke, he was testing the net's strength. He pushed against it gently at first, then with more force. The aliens expected him to exhaust himself quickly. Instead, they watched in horror as the energy strands began to stretch and weaken. "Impossible," Catel breathed. "That net can hold a Taraxian battle beast." "Maybe your equipment is broken," Minho suggested helpfully. He found a weak point in the energy pattern and pushed hard against it. The net snapped apart with a shower of sparks. Minho brushed the broken energy fragments off his shirt and smiled at the aliens. "That was interesting, but I really do have work to complete. I found some unusual bacterial samples today that need immediate analysis. Velak was beginning to panic. Nothing was going according to plan. This primitive creature was resisting their most advanced weapons. Worse, it seemed completely unafraid. It was treating them like a minor inconvenience. "Seize it manually," Velak ordered. The three aliens approached Minho carefully. They were much taller than him, and their arms were longer. They should have been able to overpower one small human easily. But when Nexar grabbed Minho's arm, he got a surprise. Minho's grip strength was incredible. His hand closed around Nexar's wrist like a steel clamp. The alien tried to pull away but could not break. "Free. Please do not grab me without permission," Minho said calmly. "It is considered rude in human culture." Nexar pulled harder, using all his strength. Instead of releasing him, Minho held on and began to squeeze. The alien's wrist bones started to creak under the pressure. "Let me go!" Nexar screamed. "Of course," Minho said, immediately releasing him. "I was just demonstrating human grip strength. We developed it for climbing and tool use." Nexar staggered backward, holding his injured wrist. Cattell and Velak stared at Minho with new understanding. This creature was not weak. It was incredibly strong, but it was also restrained. It could have crushed Nexar's bones, but it had chosen not to. "What are you?" Velak asked. "I told you," Minho replied patiently. "I am Kang Minho, a student of marine biology from Seoul, South Korea, Earth. I am here studying extremophile organisms." "Extremophile," Cattell repeated. "Creatures that thrive in extreme conditions." "Exactly," Minho said with a smile. "Like the bacteria that live in boiling water, or the tardigrades that can survive in space. Life finds a way to adapt to even the harshest environments." The aliens looked around the desert with fresh eyes. The blazing sun, the dry air, the poisonous creatures, the lack of water. To them, this place was a nightmare of deadly conditions. But to Minho, it was just another day at the office. "This whole planet," Velak whispered. "It is a death world." "Death world?" Minho asked. "That seems a bit dramatic. Sure, Australia can be dangerous if you are not careful, but humans have lived here for thousands of years. We adapt." Catel was frantically scanning the environment with her instruments. The readings terrified her. Deadly radiation from the sun, toxic plants, venomous animals, extreme temperatures, and air that was too rich in oxygen for most species to breathe safely. "How many of your species live on this death world?" she asked. "About 8 billion, Minho answered cheerfully. "Though most of them prefer cities to places like this, I happen to enjoy field work. 8 billion. The number hit the aliens like a physical blow. 8 billion creatures that could survive on a planet that would kill most galactic species in minutes. Velak made a decision that he would regret for the rest of his life. Instead of retreating and calling for massive backup, he decided to try one more capture attempt. After all, they outnumbered this human 3-1. "Surround it," he ordered. "We take it together." As the three aliens moved to encircle him, Minho sighed and reached into his backpack. His girlfriend Somin had given him something before he left for this research trip. She was an engineering student and worried about him being alone in the dangerous outback. Minho pulled out a small device that looked like a TV remote control. It was Somin's latest invention, a personal defense tool that generated electromagnetic pulse bursts. She had designed it to disable electronic equipment used by poachers and illegal miners. "I really did not want to do this," Minho said apologetically. "But you are making it difficult for me to finish my work." He pressed the button on Soman's device. A powerful electromagnetic pulse burst out in all directions. The aliens' equipment immediately began sparking and shutting down. Their weapons went dead. Their communication devices failed. Even their suits stopped working properly. "Now," Minho said, slipping the device back into his backpack. "Would you like to discuss this peacefully, or do I need to call for help?" The 3 aliens stood in the desert, cut off from their ship and their technology, facing a creature they were beginning to realize they had vastly underestimated. The electromagnetic pulse from Soman's device had done more damage than Minho realized. Not only had it disabled the aliens' handheld equipment, but it had also disrupted the systems keeping their ship invisible. The large silver craft flickered and became fully visible against the blue sky. Velak stared at his dead communicator with growing panic. Without it, he could not contact his ship or call for backup. Worse, the ship's stealth systems were failing. If any human aircraft passed overhead, they would see the vessel. "You have doomed us all!" Velak screamed at Minho. "Do you know what you have done?" "I stopped you from attacking me," Minho replied calmly. "If you had simply introduced yourselves politely, none of this would have happened." Catel was checking her equipment desperately. Everything was fried. Her scanner, her medical kit, even her emergency beacon, all useless. "Commander, we need to reach the ship manually. The automated systems should still be functional." "Agreed," Velak said. "But we cannot leave this creature free. It has seen too much." The 3 aliens looked at Minho with predatory eyes. Without their technology, they would have to rely on physical force. They were taller than him and had longer arms. Surely they could overpower one human. Minho saw the change in their posture and sighed. He had hoped to resolve this peacefully, but the aliens seemed determined to fight. He set down his backpack carefully and rolled up his sleeves. "I really do not want to hurt you," he said, "but I will defend myself if necessary." Nexar, his wrist, still aching from Minho's earlier grip, decided to attack first. He lunged forward with his long arms outstretched, planning to tackle the human to the ground. What happened next shocked all 3 aliens. Minho moved faster than they thought possible. He sidestepped Nexar's charge and grabbed the alien's extended arm. Using Nexar's own momentum against him, Minho spun and threw the alien over his shoulder. Nexar flew through the air and crashed into a pile of rocks 10 meters away. "Judo," Minho explained to the other 2 aliens. "A martial art developed on Earth. It uses an opponent's strength against them." Catel and Velak stared at their companion groaning among the rocks. How had this small creature thrown someone twice its weight so easily? "Your species is stronger than you appear," Velak observed. "We have to be," Minho said. "Earth is a dangerous place. Humans who could not defend themselves did not survive long enough to have children." Velak and Catel attacked together this time. They moved in from opposite sides, hoping to overwhelm Minho with coordinated strikes. But Minho had been in fights before. During his 3 years in Australia, he had tangled with everything from drunk university students to territorial wombats. As Velak came in high, Minho ducked low and swept the alien's legs. Velak crashed to the ground hard. At the same time, Minho caught Catel's incoming strike and twisted her arm behind her back in a restraint hold. "Please stop fighting," Minho said, as he held the female alien immobilized. "I do not want to hurt any of you." But his restraint was interpreted as weakness. Velak rolled to his feet and grabbed a large rock, intending to smash it against Minho's head. Minho saw the attack coming and made a decision that changed everything. He released Catel and spun to face Velak. This time he did not hold back his strength. His fist connected with Valak's jaw with a sound like a sledgehammer hitting concrete. The alien commander flew backward and hit the ground unconscious. Cattle stared at her fallen leader in terror. The human had knocked out Valak with a single punch. She had seen Valak fight Taraxian warriors and win. How was this soft-looking creature so deadly? "I warned you," Minho said sadly. Violence was not necessary. Nexar was struggling to get up from the rocks, and Valak was unconscious. Catel was alone and terrified. She needed to reach the ship and get help, but the human stood between her and safety. "Let me pass," she pleaded. "We will leave your world and never return." "I am afraid I cannot do that," Minho said. "You have seen too much, as you said about me. Besides, I am very curious about your technology and your people." Cattle tried to run around him, but Minho easily caught her. His reflexes were incredibly fast, and his endurance seemed unlimited. She was already breathing hard from the fight, but he was not even sweating. "How?" she gasped. "How are you so strong, so fast?" "Evolution," Minho explained as he held her gently but firmly. "Humans come from a world where everything tries to kill us. Our ancestors survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plague, famine, and constant attacks from predators. Only the strongest and smartest humans lived long enough to reproduce." As if summoned by his words, the local wildlife began to take notice of the disturbance. A dingo pack had been drawn by the sounds of fighting. The wild dogs circled at a distance, their yellow eyes fixed on the aliens. Cattle saw the predators and panicked. "They will attack us." "Not if you stay calm," Minho said. "Dingoes are curious but cautious. They are trying to decide if we are dangerous or just food." One of the larger dingoes approached slowly. It sniffed at the unconscious Valak, then looked up at Minho. To Cattle's amazement, Minho spoke to the wild dog in a gentle voice. "Hello, boy. We are not food today. These are my friends, and they are under my protection." The dingo seemed to understand. It looked at Minho for a long moment, then trotted back to its pack. The group of wild dogs settled down nearby to watch, but made no aggressive moves. "Impossible," Catel whispered. "You commanded the predators." "Not commanded," Minho corrected. "Communicated. Many Earth creatures are intelligent enough to recognize strength and authority. They know I am not afraid of them, so they respect me." Nexar had finally made it back to the group, limping and holding his ribs. He stared at the dingoes in terror. "They are going to eat us." "No," Minho said, "but other things might if we stay here too long. The sun is getting high, and the temperature will reach dangerous levels soon. We should move to shade." He looked at the alien ship hovering nearby. "Does your vessel have climate control?" "Yes," Catel admitted reluctantly. "Good. We will continue our conversation there." "You want to board our ship?" Nexar asked incredulously. "Why not?" Minho said. "I am curious about your technology, and you need medical attention." He walked over to Valak and checked the alien's pulse. It was strong and steady. "He will be fine, just unconscious. I calculated the force needed to disable him without causing permanent damage." Catel stared at Minho with new understanding. "You held back. Even when we attacked you, you held back your full strength." "Of course," Minho said. "Unnecessary violence is wrong. I used only the minimum force required to defend myself." The aliens realized with growing horror that this human could have killed them all easily, but had chosen not to. What kind of species had such deadly capability, combined with such restraint? Minho picked up the unconscious Velak and slung him over his shoulder like a sack of grain. "Shall we go? I would like to see inside your ship before the afternoon heat makes travel unpleasant." As they walked toward the alien vessel, Nexar whispered to Catel, "What have we discovered?" Catel watched Minho carrying their commander effortlessly while chatting about the local weather. "I think," she said quietly, "we have found the apex predator of the galaxy, and it is polite." The dingo pack followed them at a respectful distance, as if they were escorting a pack leader to his new territory. High overhead, a wedge-tailed eagle circled, and even that mighty bird seemed to acknowledge Minho's dominance of the desert. For the first time in their exploration of the galaxy, the Veltari had encountered a species that was not only more dangerous than they were, but more civilized as well. The implications of this discovery would shake their understanding of the universe. But first, they had to survive long enough to report back to their people. And that depended entirely on the mercy of one Korean graduate student who just wanted to finish his research project. Inside the alien ship, Minho felt like a child visiting a science museum. Everything fascinated him. The walls glowed with soft light that had no visible source. Control panels covered in symbols he could not read lined every surface. The air smelled clean and sterile, completely different from the dusty desert outside. "This is incredible," he said, setting the still unconscious Velak down gently on what looked like a medical table. "Your technology is far beyond anything humans have developed." Catel and Nexar watched him nervously. Even inside their own ship, they did not feel safe. This human had proven he could defeat them easily, and now he was studying their most advanced systems. "Do not touch anything," Nexar warned. "You might damage something important." "Of course not," Minho replied. "I am a scientist. I observe, before I interact." He walked around the ship's interior, making mental notes of everything he saw. His girlfriend So-Min had taught him to recognize different types of electronic systems. These alien devices seemed to use some form of crystalline technology combined with what looked like biological components. Meanwhile, Velak began to wake up. He groaned and held his jaw, which was already swelling from Minho's punch. When he saw where he was, he tried to sit up quickly. "Easy," Minho said, gently pushing the alien commander back down. "You have a mild concussion. Rest for a few minutes." "Get away from me," Velak snarled. "You are our prisoner, not our doctor." Minho raised his eyebrows. "I think you are confused about who is the prisoner here." To prove his point, he walked to what looked like the ship's main control panel. The aliens panicked when they saw him approaching their navigation systems. "Stop!" Catel shouted. "Those controls regulate life support." "Relax," Minho said. I'm just looking." But as he leaned closer to examine the alien text, his phone rang. The sound startled everyone. Minho had forgotten that his satellite phone could still receive calls even in this remote location. "Excuse me," he said politely to the aliens. "I should answer this." He pulled out his phone and looked at the caller ID. It was his friend Park Ji-won. "Hello, Ji-won," he said in Korean. "Minho, thank goodness you answered," came his friend's voice through the speaker. "I have been trying to reach you for hours. How is the research going?" "It is going very well," Minho replied, looking at the three terrified aliens. "I have made some interesting discoveries." "That is great. Listen, I have exciting news. Professor Yoon wants to publish your preliminary findings in the journal. He thinks your work on extremophiles could revolutionize astrobiology." "Astrobiology," Minho repeated, thoughtfully. Yes, I think my research might be more relevant to that field than I originally thought. The aliens listened to the conversation with growing confusion. This human was calmly chatting on a communication device while holding them prisoner on their own ship. Anyway, Jiwan continued, I wanted to let you know that Somin has been worried. She said her electromagnetic device you borrowed has a limited battery life. She wants to know if it worked properly. Minho looked at the aliens. Still dead equipment. Yes, it worked perfectly. Tell her she is a genius. I will. Oh, and Dongyun called. He is back from military training and wants to hear about your adventure stories when you return. Military training, Minho mused. Tell him I have some very interesting stories to share. The mention of military training made Velak's blood run cold. If this seemingly ordinary human had friends with military experience, what kind of weapons and tactics did they know? I have to go now, Jiwan, Minho said. But call me again in 2 hours. If I do not answer, contact Professor Yoon and tell him to alert the authorities. Is everything okay? Jiwan's voice became concerned. You sound strange. Everything is fine. I am just meeting some new people, international visitors. After he hung up, Minho turned back to the aliens with a smile. Sorry about that. My friends worry when they cannot reach me. Your species has global communication networks, Cattell observed. Of course. How else would we coordinate activities across the planet? Velak was beginning to realize the magnitude of their mistake. This was not a primitive world with isolated tribes. It was a connected civilization with billions of individuals who could communicate instantly across vast distances. How many of your warriors have military training? He asked. Warriors? Minho laughed. We do not have warriors anymore. We have soldiers, and they are professionals. Most humans are civilians like me. But you fight like a trained combatant. Every Korean man serves in the military for at least 18 months, Minho explained. It is required by law, and I have been living in Australia for 3 years. You learn to defend yourself here, or you do not survive long. As if to demonstrate his point, an alarm began sounding from the ship's external sensors. Something large was approaching from outside. What is that? Nexar asked, checking his instruments. On the viewing screen, they could see a massive shape moving through the brush toward the ship. It was over 2 meters tall and covered in black feathers. A cassowary, one of the most dangerous birds on Earth, had been attracted by the ship's energy signature. Oh, wonderful, Minho said with genuine pleasure. A cassowary. I was hoping to see one during this trip. The aliens stared at the approaching bird with horror. Their database identified it as a creature capable of running 50 kilometers per hour, with claws that could slice through metal, and a disposition so aggressive it attacked without provocation. It will damage our ship, Cattell said in panic. Not if I talk to it, Minho said, walking toward the ship's exit. You cannot go out there, Velak protested. That creature is a killing machine. It is just territorial, Minho replied. Like most Australian wildlife, it will calm down once it understands I am not a threat. Before the aliens could stop him, Minho opened the ship's door and stepped outside. The cassowary immediately noticed him and began moving in his direction. Its bright blue head bobbed as it walked, and the sharp claw on each foot gleamed in the sunlight. The aliens watched through their viewing screen in fascination and terror. They expected to see the human torn apart in seconds. Instead, they saw Minho sit down calmly on the desert sand. He made himself smaller and less threatening. When the cassowary approached, he spoke to it in the same gentle voice he had used, with the dingo pack. "Hello, beautiful," he said to the giant bird. "You are very impressive. But this is not your territory, is it? You are just curious about our strange metal nest." The cassowary stopped about 3 meters away from Minho and studied him carefully. It could sense that this human was not afraid, which confused its predatory instincts. Most creatures either ran from cassowaries or tried to attack them. This one just sat peacefully and talked. Minho slowly reached into his backpack and pulled out an energy bar. He unwrapped it and broke off a piece, then tossed it gently toward the bird. The cassowary pecked at the food cautiously, then ate it. "There," Minho said. "We are friends now. You can continue your patrol, and we will leave your territory soon." The massive bird looked at Minho for a few more seconds, then turned and walked away through the brush. It had decided he was not a threat to its domain. Minho returned to the ship, where the 3 aliens stared at him in complete shock. "How?" Nexar whispered. "How did you do that?" "Understanding," Minho said simply. "That bird was not attacking. It was investigating. Most animals are reasonable if you communicate properly." Velak realized that everything they thought they knew about survival was wrong. On their home world, predators were avoided at all costs. The idea of communicating with dangerous creatures was unthinkable. "Your species lives alongside the Deathworld creatures," he said. "You are not separate from them. You are part of the ecosystem." "Exactly," Minho said. "Humans are not visitors on Earth. We evolved here alongside everything else. We learned to coexist because we had no choice." The communication panel suddenly sparked to life. The ship's automated repair systems had finally fixed the damage from Soman's electromagnetic pulse. Velak immediately rushed to the controls. "Finally," he said, "I can contact the fleet and call for backup." But as he reached for the communication controls, Minho's hand closed gently but firmly over his wrist. "I would think carefully about that decision," Minho said quietly. There was something in his voice that made all 3 aliens freeze. For the first time, they heard the undertone of danger that Minho usually kept hidden beneath his polite exterior. "You see," Minho continued, "you have already attacked me once. You tried to kidnap me. You called me a primitive specimen. Now, you want to bring more of your people to my world." His grip on Velak's wrist tightened slightly, not enough to cause damage, but enough to demonstrate his strength. "I think," Minho said, "it is time for you to learn what happens when you underestimate a Deathworlder." Velak stared down at the human hand wrapped around his wrist. Such a small hand compared to his own, but the strength in it was terrifying. He had felt that grip before, when Nexar had been caught. Now he understood that Minho had been gentle with them from the beginning. "You would not dare harm us," Velak said, trying to sound confident. "We are explorers, scientists, like yourself." "Scientists do not kidnap their test subjects," Minho replied calmly. "And explorers ask permission before they land on someone else's world." He released Velak's wrist and stepped back, but positioned himself between the aliens and their communication controls. "Let me tell you about my planet," Minho continued. "You called it a death world, and you were correct, but you did not understand what that means." He walked to the ship's viewing screen and gestured at the desert landscape outside. "This is one of the gentler parts of Earth. In other places we have storms that can level entire cities, earthquakes that crack the ground open, volcanoes that block out the sun with ash, oceans with waves as tall as mountains. The aliens listened with growing unease. We have diseases that can kill millions of people, parasites that eat their hosts from the inside, plants that are more poisonous than your weapons, animals that hunt in coordinated packs with intelligence nearly equal to our own. Cattle was frantically taking notes on a backup device. How does any species survive such conditions? By becoming more dangerous than everything else, Minho said simply. Humans are persistence hunters. We can track prey for days without stopping. We can run until our targets collapse from exhaustion. We can survive injuries that would kill most creatures. He sat down casually, but the aliens noticed he never took his eyes off them. More importantly, we learned to work together. 8 billion humans, all connected by communication networks, all sharing knowledge instantly. When one human discovers something new, every other human can learn it within days. Impossible, Nexar whispered. No species can coordinate that many individuals. Would you like me to demonstrate? Minho asked. He pulled out his phone again and dialed a number. Hello, Soman? It is me. Yes. The research is going very well. Listen, I need a small favor. Could you contact Professor Yoon and ask him about the classified military research he mentioned last month? The project about electronic warfare countermeasures? Yes. Tell him it is urgent. He hung up and smiled at the aliens. My girlfriend is an engineering student. My professor has military connections. Within an hour, I will know everything the Korean government has learned about electronic warfare. By tomorrow, that information will be shared with allied nations around the world. The implications hit Velak like a physical blow. If humans could share information that quickly, then everything they had done here would be reported to Earth's authorities within hours. You are bluffing, he said desperately. Your species cannot be that organized. Would you like another example? Minho asked. My friend Dong Hyun just finished military training. He specializes in anti-aircraft systems. My classmate Hyuna studies martial arts. She could probably defeat all three of you without breaking a sweat. My professor, Dr. Yoon, survived alone in the Amazon rainforest for 6 months studying venomous insects. Each name sent fresh waves of terror through the aliens. They were beginning to understand that Minho was not exceptional among his species. He was ordinary. The Australian government has been tracking your ship since your stealth systems failed, Minho continued conversationally. They think you are a new type of military aircraft. Fighter jets are probably already scrambling to intercept you. As if summoned by his words, they heard the distant sound of jet engines approaching. You need to leave, Minho said. Now. Before this becomes an international incident. We cannot leave without completing our mission, Velak said stubbornly. The collective sent us to evaluate this world for colonization. Minho laughed, and the sound made all three aliens step backward. Colonization? You want to invade a planet full of 8 billion Deathworlders? Do you have any idea what that would mean? He stood up and walked closer to them. They could see themselves reflected in his dark eyes, and for the first time, they saw themselves as he saw them. Weak, fragile creatures from a soft world. Humans have been fighting wars for 10,000 years, Minho said quietly. We have weapons that can destroy entire continents. We have soldiers trained from childhood to kill efficiently. We have generals who study nothing but strategy and tactics. But most importantly, he continued, we have 8 billion individuals who will all fight to defend their families, their homes, their planet. Every single one of them is a potential soldier. Every one of them grew up on a death world. The jet engines were getting closer now. Soon they would be visible on the horizon. I am giving you a choice, Minho said. Leave now, peacefully, and I will tell my government this was a misunderstanding. Stay and face the consequences of threatening Earth. Velak looked at his companions. Nexar was nursing his injured ribs and wrist. Cattell was staring at her readings with terror. Their equipment was barely functional. They had no backup, no support, and no way to fight even one human, let alone billions of them. If we leave, Velak asked, what will you tell your people? The truth, Minho said. That I met 3 explorers who made a mistake. That they were curious about Earth but realized it was not suitable for their people. That they left peacefully when they understood the situation. It was more mercy than they deserved, and they all knew it. But, Minho continued, you will need to make some promises. What kind of promises? Cattell asked. First, you will mark Earth as a restricted world. In your databases, no more unauthorized visits. Agreed, Velak said quickly. Second, if your people ever want to make official contact, you will go through proper diplomatic channels. No more abduction attempts. Agreed. Third, and here Minho's voice became very serious, you will spread the word among other spacefaring. Species. Earth is not a primitive world to be conquered. It is a death world inhabited by apex predators. Approach with caution or do not approach at all. The 3 aliens nodded frantically. They would be happy to warn others about this terrifying planet. Good, Minho said, relaxing slightly. Now get out of here before those jets arrive. The aliens rushed to their controls. The ship's engines powered up with a high whining sound. As they prepared to lift off, Velak turned back to Minho. What are you? He asked one final time. Minho thought for a moment, then smiled. I am a graduate student working on his thesis. I study small life forms that survive in extreme conditions. In a few months, I will finish my degree and probably get a job teaching children about science. He paused, looking out at the desert where he had spent the last 2 weeks collecting samples. I am completely ordinary by human standards. There are 8 billion others just like me. That was the most terrifying thing the aliens had ever heard as. Their ship lifted into the sky and accelerated toward space. The 3 Veltari sat in stunned silence. Finally, Nexar spoke. Commander, what do we tell the collective? Velak thought about it for a long time. How could he explain that they had discovered a species that was stronger, faster, smarter, and more dangerous than anything in the known galaxy? How could he make them understand that what they had assumed was a primitive world was actually a fortress populated by the most successful predators in the universe? We tell them the truth, he said finally. We tell them that Earth is a Class 3 death world inhabited by apex predators who masquerade as an intelligent species. We tell them that humans are not to be contacted without massive military backup, and even then, only if absolutely necessary. Will they believe us? Cattell asked. Velak looked at his injured crewmates and thought about the human who had defeated them so easily while remaining polite and helpful. They will when I show them the recordings, he said. No one will want to face a Deathworlder after seeing what just one of them can do. Back on Earth, Minho watched the alien ship disappear into the blue sky. The jet fighters arrived a few minutes later, circling the area before determining there was no threat. He waved at them cheerfully and went back to collecting rock samples. His phone rang again. It was Somin. Minho! I talked to Professor Yoon. He wants to know why you need information about electronic warfare. Are you in some kind of trouble? Minho. looked at the scorch marks where the alien weapons had failed to affect him, then at the spot where he had casually overpowered 3 advanced extraterrestrial beings. "No trouble at all," he said. "Just an interesting day doing field work. I think I have enough samples now. I should head back to the university tomorrow." "Good," Soman said. "I missed you. Did anything exciting happen?" Minho smiled as he packed up his equipment. Somewhere in space, 3 aliens were racing back to their people with warnings about the terrifying death world called Earth and its impossibly dangerous inhabitants. "Nothing too exciting," he said. "Just another day in Australia.